Thanks so much for staying with us on SABC News. Now, CropLife South Africa has said that there's a near-pandemic outbreak of cockroaches affecting communities around the country, particularly in Gauteng. The cause of the outbreak is attributed to a combination of unhygienic living conditions and a hot and humid climate. Let's speak to CropLife South Africa Operations and Stewardship Manager, Dr. Gerhard Verdoorn. Thanks so much for your time on SABC News this evening. So how bad is this problem, and how did you figure out that there is this problem?
I think the problem is pretty bad, and I've heard from people in the Western Cape that don't believe what we're saying, but they don't have their feet on the ground. What I've seen now since about February last year was a sudden surge in the number of calls coming to my help number at CropLife SA for people wanting to know how to control cockroaches. And then when I give them the guidance, I get the pictures back of literally the floor completely black with dead cockroaches. And this is from the Western Cape, the Gauteng area, the coastal areas, inland areas all over the place. So I believe we are really sitting on a massive, massive outbreak that I haven't seen in my life since I've been running a Poison Information Center.
All right. You said that the issue is so bad that cockroaches, which are normally active at night, are active in the day at homes, hospitals and shops. Why is this?
Well, first of all, I think in the beginning you mentioned that we've had conducive climate for that. So we came through a very bad drought in the country that basically wiped out virtually all the insect population. But the moment the rain started coming about 2.5 to 3 years ago, it started becoming very moist in most parts of the country. The summers were very hot and very humid, and that creates a very conducive environment for cockroaches to breed and to proliferate. So good climate is always a good thing for any insects. We could see it also with the normal agricultural pest insects. We saw it with the moth insect. We saw it with normal flies and mosquitoes. Everything just boomed in number, but not at the level that we saw with cockroaches. That was the first big catalyst. But then what worries me is if I talk to people and I see the pictures of the kitchens and the neighborhoods where they live in, it is actually very unhygienic, and that cuts across the board. It's from the very poor communities right up to the very wealthy communities. It doesn't matter where you live, especially people living in apartment buildings and people living in informal settlements where there's a huge amount of refuse lying around. There's foodstuffs lying around. People don't put the dog food away at night. The kitchen sinks are littered with dirty crockery, and the bread and other stuff are lying around the kitchen. So I think we point the fingers back at ourselves as human beings for being one of the other catalysts of the cockroach outbreak, apart from the climate, for creating a very good living environment by giving them a place to live in our homes, in other words, behind the kitchen sink and under our utensils that are always warm and a nice place to live and very dark. Plus, we offer them all the food stuff. So no wonder we sit on a situation in South Africa where we've got this massive outbreak of cockroaches.
Okay, you've also raised a concern around illegal pesticides around this issue. Tell me about that.
Yeah, that's actually why we went public with this whole thing, because if you go into the store of any place that sells pesticides, you will find pesticides that are registered on the shelf for the control of cockroaches indoors. If you do it properly and you use protective clothing, the risk for people and for your pets is actually very low. But unfortunately, people saw an opportunity of getting their hands on pesticides that's only supposed to be used in agriculture, like, for example, dichlorphos, which is a pure organophosphate. They decant that into a small container and sell it off to unknowing people that don't know how toxic the stuff is. And then they fumigate their home with that, or they spray it indoors with dire consequences. So we are gravely concerned at CropLife SA about the use of something like that because of the risk for people. So that's why we say to people, do not buy anything which you see advertised on Facebook or Twitter or WhatsApp, because it is 99% unlawful. Rather buy yourself a proper insecticide from a retail outlet. Read the label meticulously to make sure you use the protective clothing. Make sure no one or any pets are indoors where you apply the stuff. And just follow all the safety precautions, because then you can eradicate the cockroaches without causing any harm to yourself or to your family or to the pets living in your home.
Okay, Dr. Verdoorn, you've spoken about the environment in which these cockroaches are thriving, and you've said that it's the weather to blame and it's the living conditions of people as well. You know, there have been so many complaints about service delivery in Gauteng in particular, in different parts in Pretoria. I know in Tshwane sometimes the rubbish is staying there for long. Is that contributing to this outbreak? And then also talk to me about the specific type of cockroach that you say is also infesting Johannesburg.
Well, it's mainly the German cockroach. These are the large ones, and if I say large, they can be anything from 20 millimeters up to possibly 30 to 40 meters long, depending on which part of the country you live. And they grow enormous in size. And these are the ones that mostly scurry around on the floor. They do fly, but they're mostly ground-living animals or terrestrial animals. If you look at the American cockroach, the long, thin brown one, they hardly ever become a problem. So we sit basically with a German cockroach outbreak. And as you said, service delivery, in other words, refuse not being removed on a regular basis. Power outages also help them to live happily because in the dark they scurry around and there's a perfect environment for them to breathe. So I think the Eskom story and refuse lying around and people not living clean in their own homes, all of these caused a massive outbreak.
All right. CropLife South Africa Operations and Stewardship Manager, Dr. Gerhard Verdoorn. Really appreciate your time on SABC News this evening, joining us to talk about the outbreak of cockroaches across South Africa, but in particular in Gauteng.